Well, hey everyone, thanks for joining again. This is Alex Slosby, Noble's class of 1996, and I'm excited to bring to you today another great story of a Noble's innovator and entrepreneur, and in this case, Seth Goldman, class of 1983. Seth, great to see you.
Hey Alex, good to be with you.
Thanks so much for joining today. I'm really excited to help you share your story, just an amazing one with everyone from your time at Noble's through to Harvard, Yale, founding a company a lot of folks will have heard of, and then your experience engaging in a lot of causes beyond honest tea. And also really excited to have you share some advice and guidance that we would all love to hear, those of us aspiring to be innovators and entrepreneurs.
Great.
So to start, perhaps you could just share a few memories of your time at Noble's and perhaps speak a little bit about that path that took you from Noble's to focusing more on sort of the civic and government side of things at Harvard.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting. When I came to Nobles, I was I came from Wellesley Junior High School. I had been doing okay there, but I certainly wasn't shining or excelling. And Nobles really did provide this pivot point for me where I was able to get, I think, partially thanks to some extra attention, and then partially because it was a smaller school, I got some great leadership opportunities to be able to become to participate on a lot of different teams, to be in the Nobelonians, to be president of the school. And so just got some opportunities I probably wouldn't have gotten in that larger school. And at the same time, there was also this piece where I remember I came in as a 10th grader, and a lot of the social groups had already been set. And I initially was, eager to try to fit in. And my brother actually gave me some great advice, which was, don't try too hard to fit in. Just do what you do. Don't change your behavior to try to fit in. And for me, that even included not drinking beer, which at least when I was there was like huge, set me apart. And then so even that little pattern of behavior helped me feel comfortable being, I don't want to say an outsider, but not going along with the crowd. And that kind of thinking obviously is something I still do today.
Wonderful. So that path then took you to Harvard and a focus on government, civics, politics?
Yeah, I was always interested in politics. I had worked on different campaigns. I had, as I said, run for student government. And so I thought, my long-term path to change, I was always thinking about how could I make an impact in the world. And I thought it would be through politics. And so I was a government major at Harvard, and I got, I did, as I said, politics on campus, and I was elected a marshal at Harvard as well. And it was really only after I graduated that I sort of found a different way to address the public arena, but to do it, through the private sector.
Yeah, so it sounds like you had, you said you did some traveling and things after Harvard. You found your way to Yale School of Management. And again, I believe you shared it was a bit of a continued focus on public sector civic engagement while at Yale.
Right. I had run a demonstration program for what became AmeriCorps. I had run a program in Baltimore, which was modeled a lot after City Year, the program in Boston. I was friendly with the founders there. And I loved that work, but I also saw that to really be successful at scaling an organization, an effort like that, you need management skills. So I thought going to the Yale School of Management would be a good move. And it was a good move for me, but it also awakened to me this much bigger idea, which is that business can be an effective arena to bring change, positive change to the environment, to people, and even to communities around the world. So that was where I made that transition.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you graduated, and then one day you had a spark, an insight. Could you share that?
Yeah, so I after Yale, came down to Bethesda, Maryland. I worked for what was called Calvert Group. It was a socially responsible mutual fund. They had a policy against investing in companies with bad environmental records or tobacco companies, and I was enjoying the work. And after a presentation in New York City one day, I went for a run in Central Park. And after the run, I was thirsty, and I went to a beverage cooler, and I said, "Boy, there's really nothing here." And I was with a friend who I had run track in college, and my friend said, "Well, what do you mean? There's hundreds of options." I said, "Yeah, but they're all the same. They all have the same, maybe mostly the same ingredient, which was high fructose corn syrup. They all have the same flavor profile. It was just different colors you're really choosing and different labels." I said, "Nobody's making a drink that just got much less sweetener." And so I reached out to my business school professor, Barry Nailbuff, who, by the way, went to Belmont Hill.
Oh.
And I had talked to him when I was a student. We had studied the beverage industry and we'd recognized there was something missing. And I said, that discussion we had about what's missing in the beverage space is still relevant. And I think I'm going to do something about it. And he was very eager. He and I had a great relationship. He was eager to invest in something I would be launching. He had come up with the name Honest Tea, which was a wonderful name. And so I left my job in the investment field and started Honest Tea out of my house 23 years ago.
Wow. So, and I think it was about 20 years you were with Honest Tea there.
Yeah.
Share a bit about that, and we'll talk a little bit about then sort of that move to Coca-Cola.
It was so fun because we started from scratch. Out of my house, brewing tea in my kitchen, my first desk. People, during this pandemic have been used to working out of their homes, but back then it was a little less professional. And so, my youngest son had just been born and he was my office buddy, I used to say. And it was just really wonderful to build from scratch an enterprise that was obviously more than just selling tea. It was really trying to change people's diets because we wanted to offer something less sweetened. Could we shift people's calories? And then, of course, we were the first to make organic bottled tea and the first to make fair trade certified bottled tea. So we really, what we said, our mission was in the bottle. We brewed it into the tea. And we started in the natural channel and primarily Whole Foods and other independent natural stores. And then we grew that to become the best-selling tea in the natural foods industry. And then that was our launch pad to gain broader distribution. And as we grew, we needed a partner who could bring it to all the different stores. We were in about 15,000 natural stores. And when Coca-Cola came in as an investor, we expanded about 150,000 stores, including, scaling it around the globe. And so, the thought was that if what we're doing is good, meaning selling this organic, lower calorie, fair trade tea, then we should do more of it. And to do more of it, we need a partner who has that scale. And that's what Coca-Cola brought. And so it was a really good partnership. We sold to them in 2011, and I stayed on board until 2019. But in 2015, I started to split my time between Honest Tea and this new startup getting up and running in California called Beyond Meat. I had joined the board of that in 2013 and was getting more and more excited about the work, more engaged with the work, and felt there was an opportunity to take some of the things I'd learned from Honest Tea and bring them to Beyond Meat. So I, as executive chairman, helped scale the business and helped grow internationally. And then we took it public and hopefully most of the people watching this have tasted Beyond Meat now. It is a fast growing brand and really building a whole new category.
Yeah, it's a great story. Perhaps you could share also a little bit about Plant Burger and Eat the Change as well. You're involved.
Sure. Now, just I want to, from an innovation context, though, just to share the key insight from Beyond Meat, which was that the step there was to recognize, prior to Beyond Meat, everyone who was making a veggie burger was basically taking different vegetables, mushing them together into a disc and saying that's a substitute for what comes from a cow. And Beyond Meat instead said, no, let's do a deep dive. Let's do an MRI of what a hamburger is and understand the way the amino acids are formed and bonded to those are the proteins, and how the lipids are the fats, and how the water presence is there, and how all these things are interlaced to create that juicy texture and taste. So no one had really done it from that deep science perspective. And when we did it at Beyond Meat, with the result, the Beyond Burger was just something entirely different than existed certainly in the grocery shelves or even in the restaurant arena. And so that has been the driving difference. And so it's been fun to see that scale. After we went public, I stayed as executive chairman for another year and then transitioned to just be chair of the board. And that freed me up to launch new enterprises. And so, yes, two of the new businesses I'm helping run now. One is Plant Burger, which is a chain of plant-based restaurants that we've got down here in the DC area and we'll look to expand. And the other is a brand called Eat the Change, which is earth-friendly foods, is primarily snack foods. And so our first product line, which is a line of mushroom jerky, we just launched up in New England. It's in Stop and Shop. And we're in about 1,000 stores around the country.
That's fantastic. And I'd love to maybe briefly talk through some of these great lessons I think that we can all take away from your experience. The first one is really that pivot. So, and I think a lot of folks go through it and maybe multiple pivots in their career, but perhaps just reflect, if you could, a little bit more on that pivot from the government sort of politics focus and that And then now a different direction, still socially responsible, but hey, your career took a path that perhaps you couldn't have seen, up until that spark of, insight.
Yeah, I had always thought, politics would be the most effective way to impact people's lives. And I saw two things because I spent 2.5 years working for Lloyd Bentsen in his Senate office. And and he was someone I would call a high integrity person, really a statesman as a leader, and doing good work. But I also felt a little bit disconnected from the change. It was several layers. You weren't really interacting with the people whose impact you were making. And even when you did make a change, it was, legislation. So it just didn't have that direct an impact. And what's so amazing about food as a vehicle for change is that it's the only experience that taps all of our senses, right? Artwork you just see, or music you'll just hear. But with food, it taps all the senses. And so there's this very deep connection people have to it. And so when you have the chance to bring food to people and they accept it and adopt it, it becomes part of their lives. It literally becomes part of them, right? They eat it and that transforms into their body. And so when you can bring a different way of thinking about the environment and people ingest that, they're sort of buying into that as well. And so these are changes when they stick that are deep seated. They can't be overturned by a 2-year congressional swing or some scandal some politician has. These are marketplace changes that really become enduring. And so I look at what's happening, and certainly with our climate crisis, it's a critical point. We have to mobilize everything, and the single biggest impact any of us can have on a daily basis is what we eat. And so it is still a political campaign that we're running in this case, though. But it's the campaign is to get on the shelf and to get into people's bellies.
Also wondering from an innovation perspective, it's interesting how I think recently a lot of sodas have gone away from being called diet. There certainly is an implication of diet. And so now you see no sugar, for example.
Yeah.
I was just thinking also about veggie burgers and how certainly veggie burgers always sort of shouted healthy for you. But there was also perhaps to some people a bit of I'm not sure I want to be associated. I'm sort of a meat person. So just well, how to reflect as you sort of not only the MRI, but sort of the framing of it into perhaps something that was more welcome by those who might not eat veggie burgers.
Well, I think one of the biggest knocks about veggie burgers is they just didn't taste good. Right. But there is, in terms of just the labeling, we shift to talk about plant-based. And so plant-based is a much more accessible term. But what we're showing in the way we've done the marketing with Beyond Meat is by bringing on these ambassadors from the professional sports world. That this can be all about performance. It's not about sacrificing performance. It can be really enhancing performance. And so you've seen incredible athletes, some of the world's elite athletes really saying, I'm going plant-based because I have a better recovery time, less inflammation. And so, that's an important part of the equation as well. And so you really have to build a lifestyle brand. And we talk about this as this is not just a product we're selling. It's really a whole movement.
Absolutely fantastic, and love the story. Let's wrap with perhaps some guidance. So, of course, there's a lot of students at Nobles who are always thinking about their careers and what they do. And innovation and entrepreneurship are obviously big things, but also grads, fellow alums like ourselves who are passionate about being innovators or entrepreneurs in their spaces. If possible, perhaps boil some things down to some key lessons or guidance you would have for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can draw a straight line, even though my career path is windy, I can draw a straight line from my behavior at Nobles to what I'm doing today. And so what are those things? First of all, multitasking. As I mentioned at Nobles, I was in student government. I was doing the sports. I was in the musical. I was in the singing group, debate. And I also, by the way, took some classes and, wrote some papers and that kind of thing. So multitasking is a key part of being an entrepreneur. And if you don't feel comfortable doing that as a student, then you should listen to that, because you're not going to enjoy being an entrepreneur where you've got to fundraise, in 1.5 hour and then go hire some people in another half hour and then probably go fire some people somewhere else and make a sales call and make a purchase and do some accounting. So it's all these different tasks. And I love those. I love that multitasking, but it's definitely not for everyone. I think another thing people should really be aware of is branding. So, obviously at Honesty, we really, I think, have developed a powerful brand, and I know we have it Beyond Meat as well. But the way you live as a student is your branding. So I kind of mentioned it offhand, well, I wasn't somebody who drank beer. But really what it said was, I wasn't somebody who was going to bow to peer pressure. And that was, not that that was the only part of my brand. It's not the only thing I want to be known as, but that was an important signal about how I would act. And so whether intentional or not, everything you do as a high school student with your peers, with your teachers, with your advisors, even with your parents, you're branding yourself. You're basically saying, here's who I am and here's how I act. And so what is a brand? A brand is a promise. And so, when people see a bottle of Honest Tea, they say, okay, that's going to be a less sweet drink. Ideally, not just, it is organic. It's going to be sourced with that fair trade consciousness. That's what you get. Mm-hmm. And so every student needs to think about, when people see me, what's the brand I create? Mm-hmm. And so you might think that well, I'm different than, what people think of me. But your brand is that promise. And so you take enough behavior patterns and you apply them, that's your brand. And so the thing I encourage people is make sure you're a brand you want to be, make sure you're a brand you want to live with, because don't just be the brand that somebody thinks you should be. Be the brand that you want to wake up in the morning and look in the mirror and say, yeah, this is me.
Mm-hmm. That's an excellent point. Sort of, who are you living for, yourself or for others?
That's it.
That's great. Seth, this has been wonderful. So thank you so much for your time and sharing your story and these points of wisdom for folks. I really appreciate it. And to all of you, again, thanks again for watching. It's great to have you join us, and really happy to bring to you another story of a Nobles innovator and entrepreneur, and look forward to bringing you again some more stories soon. Thanks again, Seth.
Thanks, Alex. It was nice hanging out by the castle with you.
Appreciate it so much. Take care. Bye.